Recording in progress.
Okay, welcome. It is now 2:03. Welcome to our September 20th, 2022, 2 o'clock Commissioners' Consent Agenda. Let the record reflect that there were no written comments that we received for today's items on the agenda. We will start with an open public forum, so I will start off with anyone that would like to come down and testify on anything that is not on the agenda today. Second call for anyone wishing to testify on anything that's not on our agenda today. Okay, seeing none. I'm not seeing anyone in the audience as well. Third and final call for anyone wishing to testify. I will now close the open public forum, and then we will look to our consent agenda. We do have item number 2I that we have Ms. Tony Lodge who would like to speak to that item. If you would like to come up.
Good afternoon. I'm not real sure what's going to happen, but I assume that we will be a recipient of the mental health tax allocation. This means so much to those children and adolescents who live in our community. We will be the only mental health and substance use disorder licensed facility for children of color, and that the investment that you are making in our post-COVID world and in our neighborhood and in the communities of color and other communities is insurmountable, and I applaud your investment in our future, and I thank you very much on behalf of the children and families we serve.
Thank you. And Commissioner French, if you would like to say a few words.
Yeah, I just am very, very pleased with what I anticipate to be the board's decision to be able to allocate this funding to the Native Project. And I just want to say to Ms. Lodge, we've known each other for almost 2 decades now, and you do a great job. And I really appreciate all that you're doing, not only for the community, but for the Native American community specifically and stuff. So I'm very, very pleased we were able to find this allocation for you. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's no other comments, then I will look to my fellow commissioners.
Madam Chair, I would move that we approve our consent agenda items number 2A to include 2I as presented on today's agenda.
I will second the motion.
I have a motion and a second to approve items 2A through 2I on today's consent agenda. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. With that, this was like one of those quick ones today. That will conclude the consent agenda part. We have no other public hearings that are scheduled. We are continuing our Tuesday morning budget workshop meeting to this afternoon. We have Mr. Sparber is going to be coming up to give us a detention services update. And then I believe we have an executive session after that we can state all the purposes kind of once we get done with the detention services update. So Mr. Sparber, I'll let you come up and we'll just continue our budget workshop from this morning.
Good afternoon. For the record, my name is Mike Sparber. I'm the Senior Director of Law and Justice for the county. And today I'm going to be giving an update on detention services. We're going to cover some of the population demographics. We're going to cover staffing levels, some critical junctions that may come up, housing considerations, and then some steps moving forward. So, next slide. Next slide, after that one. Is it on? Is that good? Okay, is that better? That's okay, here we go. So, just kind of following the blocks here for detention services. The jail is full of capacity. It's sprung back after the COVID relief that we had. It's back up into the 800s. And I'll kind of delve into that a little bit more as we get on in the presentation. Staffing levels have dropped to an all-time low of 35 officers. There are currently 12 in the hiring process. But as you're well aware, it takes about 9 months before they're eligible to be on solo duty. So as the attrition grows, the need to pull additional staff from Geiger increases. Therefore, we'll be looking at, cutting back on some of the program or some of the floors that are available out of Geiger, and then pulling that population back to the jail. And I'll cover that just a little bit more too. Corrections officers, they're being stretched to the limits, covering 24-hour post individually on their, on overtime, and that's at both facilities. It's not just downtown, it's out of Geiger to compensate for the positions that we removed out of Geiger. Our annual attrition rate is between 15 and 20. So it seems like when we look at this, that they're not going to be able to, detention services isn't going to hire their way out of it, especially when we're bringing ones and twosies through the door, along with, the long period it takes to get them up for solo duty and that type of stuff. So, and then, basically, as I stated, if the floor is closed at Geiger facility to bring more staff downtown, we'll have to absorb that population. And then we're going to have to do an evaluation on the contracts and our housing contracts and some of our partners. Next slide. I've been talking about the enormous length of stays. And if you look at the type A felony, the average length of stay is 233 days. We're well outside of the time limits for case standards. Same with BEC and gross misdemeanors. So what caused that? A lot of it had to do with the COVID restrictions. There was the need for social distancing at the courts. They were limited. They conducted hearings as they could. They actually conducted court off-site at a different location to try to maintain that, but it wasn't turning the cases over near as fast as it should. Our restrictions, we had to go through a 14-day quarantine period that was levied by the governor for everybody that comes into a correctional facility before we could move them to general population. Therefore, they took up two of the floors that would normally be available for general population, but were basically stagnant there for 14 days. We didn't get any clear direction. Yes, sir.
We have been through a period where FTAs represented a significant amount of our population in the detention facilities. How much of that capacity now is consumed by FTAs?
It's hard to, FTAs, we categorize it by charge. So we've got Class A. So for an FTA, it could be for a gross misdemeanor. It could be for a misdemeanor. So they're all different categories depending on which court they come out of. So we tend to land them in a category and then go from there. So we didn't have any clear direction on what to do post-COVID on how to recover from this from the state, and that includes our courts. So we're kind of feeling our way out of this. The unintended consequence was a backlog of cases at detention services, and I'll have another slide that I could show you on that part of it too. Next slide, please. So if you look up here, that's all the agencies that have got charges in the jail, and this is current as of yesterday. You see that the lion's share, responsibility based on billing is Spokane County to the right, 72%, and then onwards it goes down from that part right there. If across the top, you'll see the charges: felony A, B, C, gross misdemeanors, holds. And so when you look at these, you could tell that the county's absorbing all of the F, B, and C. And then when you look at the gross misdemeanors, then it starts falling, shaking down into the Spokane City and the valley and so on. And then if you look at the misdemeanor count, it's not a lot, it's 11. And I know that it's been said that we've got a lot of misdemeanors in our jail, but that's not entirely accurate. So standalone misdemeanor charges, we're talking about 11 of them. And then we get into the whole category, which is predominantly the U.S. Marshals, the DOC, and then outlying counties that we have to hold for extradition warrants and those type of things. So any questions on this before? It's a lot of data on there. No? Good. Go ahead.
If I could just offer a clarity from Mike here. While there are zeros for the felony A, B, and C's, Mike, that's represented because the county has to be responsible for the felonies.
Correct.
When in fact, many of those arrests occurred within the cities.
The city.
Yep, so that's just an explanation for those that are watching online. It's not that felonies aren't being committed or arrested in the cities. It's that the county bears the responsibility to house felons in our jail.
Correct. This is based on the billing and not the originating office that charged them. So a couple more staffing considerations. So we have a total of 103 staff members that are 50 or over, and you could kind of see the breakdown as far as our aging out staff. And along with that, if you look at, despite paying the incentive bonus of $7,500 for new hires, $10,000 for laterals, a substantial union contract to increase to bring them closer to the comparables. We've been to numerous job fairs, county fairs, recruiting seminars, and at a local military base. The new hire process is not keeping pace with our attrition. So we're getting low turnouts for the test, where we used to generate, in the neighborhood of 50 to 60 people turning out for the test is now down to like 13 or 12 or 15 that are turning out for it. So it's not generating large enough numbers to keep pace. Matter of fact, we lost another one last week to a law enforcement agency as well. And generally that's where they're going, is to the law enforcement, because we're kind of easy pickings for the law enforcement. We've already conducted their background investigation. They've already familiar with the academy and Berrien's Academy, and gone through the process over there. We train them in firearms. We train them in defensive tactics. So if they have an interest in going over for the law enforcement, they're pretty easy pickings for the other law enforcement agencies. Another thing that comes up for us is those that are on protected leave. If you look at protective leave, it kind of goes through different cycles, but at any one time, that's what we're looking at. About 25 of our staff are participating in that, and that could be intermittent, FMLA, it could be, state leave and those type of things, but we still have to staff the post. It's posts that we have to staff along with those that are vacant, from vacant positions. So
Mike, how many total employees do you have?
total employees, we have 320.
Okay, because the state, it was approximately 38% of total staffing, so I just.
Yeah.
So you said,
Around there, yeah.
how many again?
38%.
Right.
Are you talking about the graph? Oh, I'm
So,
sorry.
yeah, so what's the total number again?
It's about 310 to 20. I'd have to go through all of it again. I haven't looked at it for a while. Positions. Yeah, active count is less than that, obviously.
Okay.
So if I included all the vacancies, in all the other areas, that number would be higher than 35 is total vacancies for the department. So does that answer your question?
I guess I'm trying to get clarity on, so if you have about 300 positions that are available,
We have 300 FTE positions.
okay,
That's our count, but our active count is much less than that due to the vacant. Yeah.
I can pull that down for you, Commissioner, and get it to you in a few minutes.
Oh, good.
Okay,
Perfect.
'cause-
It's nice having Ashley
because
right
of
by-
your active count, you're saying here 103 are 50 and over, just so we know
That's
what the,
correct.
so, okay.
So of total of the officers, we have 154 downtown slotted spots. We have 64 out of Geiger for the total officer count.
Okay, thank you.
So picking my brain, I haven't been over there for a while. Okay, next slide. So here's some critical junctions that we have to keep in mind. So if we end up losing more through attrition than we are to hire, we're going to have to continue to move staff from the Geiger facility downtown. And that means that work crew programs would be hit first. As we've seen so far, some of our work crew programs have gone down. We did manage to get a work crew up enough to do the county fair this year, but the rest of the numbers have gone down. That would be followed up by a closing of a floor with the rover position, and that's a total of 4 to make that impact. Then the act would fill up B building because we closed down A building completely. And then that would limit our amount of jail transfers that can come from the jail out to Geiger for housing. And then you could see that a loss of 3 to 4 additional Geiger positions would put us in this position. So it's not, the margin is real small about how far we could operate, when we'd have to consolidate into B building, when we'd have to keep the population downtown and couldn't send it out there. If more dropped down, the attrition, we'd have to close one of the floors at B building, bring no staff downtown, et cetera, et cetera. So that, obviously in the third bullet, it says the remaining option would continue until all the floors are closed. Then ultimately, it would mean a shift all the way out of Geiger to the downtown facility. But this would happen incrementally as we try to keep pace with the attrition and amount of vacancies that we have. So, next one. So we're not the only ones going through this. Here are some newspaper articles or web posts out of King County, Washington. So you can see that King County went through the same thing as we did, as did Kootenai. They've got 30% of their staff are down, and then they look over for Portland, same thing. So the story is, is widespread. It's all over the country. It's not just Spokane. It's hitting all these different areas, and these are just some that are local to the area. So, slide. So incremental steps forward. If we hit this critical point, all the staff would be shifted to the downtown to fill the void vacancies and work on the front end to hopefully increase the processes and add back services. There would be a review of the present population, prioritize it, and absorbing Geiger's population along with what is a priority in our county obligations as far as our population goes. Then we develop a mission critical hierarchy of how that bed would be allocated out, which would involve our other contracted housing contracts. And then we would continue to go through this hierarchy. It'd be much like a motel. We'd manage the beds based on this hierarchy and the severity of charge, public safety, felonies, obviously, gross misdemeanors. There's a list of gross misdemeanor, and then other charges would have to trickle in as we had space for them. So it's not a very rosy picture, but that's what it would come down to, just managing the bed space. Also recently developed through Commissioner Cooney is this felony case task force, and we're reviewing all the felony cases to try to get them back within time standards. We have several that are well beyond their time standard. I met with Judge Hazel along with Judge McKay on Friday. I had Larry Haskell was present. We had the public defenders were present, and so we just talked through a process of how we can all manage to get these cases back more in line with where there should be. And I'm hoping that, as we make progress on that and have a task force devoted to doing just that, that will start alleviating those long length of stays and create some more bed space. But that's what we have. So most of it has been caused by this backlog from COVID-19 and the inability for the courts to carry out business as normal. I mean, quite honestly. And so those cases got backed up and they got longer length of stay. So, and then we would continue to monitor our staff as it goes, with the understanding that as the attrition grows and the fill vacancies don't occur, that we would have to limit services out at Geiger until the point that would have no Geiger staff on the floors out there. Then at that point, is there next slide? Then at that point, we would continue to message what we're doing with the jail staff. They would be a part of the process and provide input along with their unions, or create a team that is just focused on detention services and a shift as it occurs to work with HR and some of the other major stakeholders to work through the process. And then we just take an incremental path going back to the jail. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. And I know there's going to be a lot of questions behind it, but that's essentially where we are as far as detention services. So questions?
I'll start. So, in talking to the sheriff today, they've been successful with their sign-on bonus, and I believe it started at a lower amount. We did bump it to get people. I don't know if that's an option. I know, traditionally staff at the detention services do leave, to go to law enforcement. That's kind of a natural progression that happens.
Right.
And since we've had so many vacancies on law enforcement side, it's kind of put you in the bind.
They did,
It seems
yeah.
like. So, what, I guess, is there anything else that we can do to try to help, help you? I know it's dollars, but at this point, we're at a critical point. So I don't know. I'm just, like I said, when we talked to Ozzy this morning and he was saying that really did help. Would that be beneficial or not? I don't know. So I'm just looking to you.
I think it'd be beneficial, and we've been working with Ashley along with Don Hooper and some of the other ones that are at detention services to try to evaluate that, look at other folks that are doing that. Hey, welcome aboard. I don't know if that one works. That one might too.
Yeah, I mean, I think we could definitely look at the sign-on bonus. The other thing that we've had a lot of conversation around lately is culture. When you have people working this many hours with more violent offenders than we've traditionally seen in our facility, the culture of wanting to be there is declining pretty rapidly. I definitely think the money is there, so we just made some really major changes to our comp packages. So I don't know if a sign-on bonus does a whole lot for us, to be totally honest. I think people are tired and they're burning out quickly. And so I think we could look at potentially increasing it, but ultimately I'm not sure if it's the massive turnaround that we need to pull more people in right out of the gates. The other issue is, to Mike's point, getting people even to sit and test right now is difficult. Getting them through the background process in our recruiting environment. The sheriff's office has been very successful with the recruiting that they've been doing for lateral, and that is actually most of the positions that they have filled are through lateral, not through entry level. And so we are taking the same approach even with our comp philosophy and looking at detention experience. Even as they're coming in, we're starting them at higher steps than a step one. So we've tried to be essentially as creative as the sheriff's office, but I think what's really difficult right now is that we're more of a feeder for law enforcement, and that's where people want to be. And because so many jobs are opening right now, we're just not seeing the level of interest in a corrections facility when there are so many law enforcement officer positions open.
Yeah, that's correct. So as we continue to work on that part of it, the other thing that goes along with this too, speaking to the culture, is they're working tremendous amounts of overtime. Most of our officers are getting 3 to 4 order ends. I can actually. There we go. Most of our officers are getting 3 to 4 order ends a week, which means that those are unexpected times they have to stay at work, which impacts their family lives and impacts everything else that's going around. And so it's hugely impacted. The culture doesn't have much chance to turn around when you're working in those kind of environments and trying to just make ends meet, your family obligations and those type of things as well. So, what I was mainly here today is just to tell you what is going on. It's basically with detention services, make you aware of the shortage of staff, make you aware of the population that's staying longer, making you aware that if the attrition rate goes up and the new hires don't come in, that we're going to have to close more services and more floors out of Geiger to the point that we would be completely out of Geiger. So
I think the other two pieces that are really impacting this as well is the amount of time that it takes for us to get officers through the academy. So, and we have no control over that. The other big issue, and Mike did touch on it, but the Washington State paid family medical leave that was instituted, it is impacting employers at a massive level. And we are seeing it not just in detention, but across our entire group. What people have figured out is that they can run leaves concurrently. And so with Washington State, what they allow is you can get your FMLA, so your federal leave for your 12 weeks, And then if you have an overlap of 1 day, you can then extend into Washington paid family leave for an additional 12 to 16 weeks. So many people have figured out the system, so to speak, and are extending leaves for a substantial amount of time. Additionally, we're seeing more non-traditional people taking leaves that we've not seen in the past.
Yeah.
In my almost 17 years of working in HR, good or bad, I have never seen the level of men taking paternity leave that we have seen with the addition of the Paid Family Medical Leave Act, because they're getting a portion of their pay from the state and they are eligible for up to 12 weeks of leave, even though they weren't the one that birthed the child. So it's impacting us in a way that I don't think any of us expected to see, and especially with the piggybacking of leaves on top of each other and the stacking. It is extremely difficult for us to maintain staffing levels with detention, and sheriff's office actually is strongly impacted with this as well, directly tied to these leaves.
Correct, yeah. And, so, you know, if you look at that too, also, that, you know, it may show active positions, but of those active positions, you got to take off another percentage that are taking advantage of this leave, you know, they're going through. And some of them are taking enormous amounts of time off of work. So we have to count them as an overtime that's not, I mean, we can't hire them for their position, even though they're not there available to work. And we have to fill their positions with overtime. And it seems to be getting worse. We've got much more now than we've ever had before over at Detention Services. And could that be attributed to the burnout? Could that be attributed to the excess overtime? I mean, it's really hard to put a finger on it. And so those are some of the things that we're seeing over there. And then, how many active positions did you find it?
So currently, at least in the position data from PeopleSoft, we have 330 active
30.
approved positions in detention services. That includes all positions, so everything from corrections officers to sergeants to cooks. When I looked at just the corrections officers, we have 160 approved for downtown and 69 at Geiger. Our vacancies, though, actually show a couple extra than what Mike even had. So we're looking at, across the 330 positions that we have approved right now, 56 vacancies between the two facilities, which include all of the positions. So
All
we do
the
have a
staff.
few cooks in there in that number, a few administrative STA type staff levels. But it's a significant amount of openings. And to Mike's point, I didn't have time to run turnover numbers, but my gut check tells me we're probably close to an 18% turnover in this department.
And we've seen it up to 20, but this is certainly high here. So
And so we have tried to look at ways to get creative recruiting. We're looking at, can we lower the entry age? Can we potentially look at 19-year-olds, 18-year-olds? But again, we're having a hard time even getting them to sit for a test, let alone pass the background portion. So Mike's team, I give them full credit. They're working directly with us from a recruiting perspective, a community engagement perspective. It's just, there are so many open positions right now. It's difficult to fill anything, let alone something that takes a massive background test and then a significant chunk of time training to be able to hit the floor.
you know, okay.
Is there any opportunity to pull in guard as a backup for at least relief for your detention service officers, or?
I don't know if that's an
So-
option. I know that the governor would appoint that. I know that there's a site in West Virginia that did just that
Yeah.
to help offset their staffing over there. So, I mean, it's an option, if it's an option, I guess is what I'm saying. It's an option for us to pull off. So, I have to do some research and look into it.
I'd be curious to find out if that's a backup for us and stuff, because,
Yeah,
you know, you could make the argument that, you know, if the staffing issue is not fixed, then DOC is going to end up being impacted, and so there is a state interest in making sure that, you know, we've got detention service officers to be able to keep the doors open.
yeah, it's highly competitive. Every time we got the raise for the comps in Kootenai County, raised their salary, and so did DOC. So everybody's trying to vie for these, you know, these folks that want to come in and take the test for us. And then, you know, to your point of the National Guard, you know, to what extent could we use them? You know, could they be up and working with the inmates? You know, I'm sure there'd be some some things they couldn't do, but I'm sure there's some things they could help with as well. So,
So when you talk about the extensive background testing and the tests that they have to go through, and then if they're new coming on, with training, can you just let us know, so if
So-
we're talking to people, we know what that is?
yeah, so onboarding process, and we've reduced it. Detention Services reduced it. When you're looking at it, they've got to complete a background investigation, then they've got to complete an integrity background, a polygraph, and then after the polygraph, they're offered a position, and then they have to go through it's reversed. Then they go through the psych evaluation, the medical evaluation, then we offer the position if they make it through all those processes. Once they get on, there's about a 9-month period before they can actually go solo duty. 10 weeks of that is an extended academy from 4 weeks to 10 weeks that the state changed over at the commission. So that's really increased, the amount of, not just us, it's all jails. If you listen to the forum, if you listen to the commander's forum, they're all saying the same thing. How are we supposed to survive 10 weeks, no positions with short staff? And it's basically overtime is the only option that you have. So
So is this something that we need to be adding to the legislative agenda? Because I guess, everyone wants to talk about what's happened with law enforcement and, pursuits and all the different things. But if this is something that, we need to be looking at, that, again, why did it go from 4 weeks to 10 weeks? Other than providing, I'm not sure what additional training that is being provided, but we do know then that's a cost that the state is doing and charging. So it's additional resources from us to do that without them, here helping serve. And if it is a tight market right now for everyone, I don't think anyone wants their citizen, people that should be in jail, not, being released because we don't have space.
correct.
And because we don't have staffing, because we've got to have staffing in order to do that. So I think we need to think through if you've got a association or group, what that is, so we can, make sure that we're getting that as a priority on our legislative agenda, because I don't think any of us want to have,
No.
Any kind of shutdown at the jail.
There is another school of thought too, that I'll just put out there, and that would be that you immediately move all the staff from Geiger to the downtown facility and fill up the staffing downtown, and then we'd use additional spaces for extra transport to court, or maybe adding back a work crew, but it would mean walking away from Geiger and moving them downtown. So it's just a thought that I'd put out there too. There's some options that we could do. The incremental approach seems to be the most wise, in my opinion, but we could also, if, bear in mind the burnout and the amount of overtime that they're working downtown, it might be more wise for us just to move all of our staff back to the building, consolidate our services, develop a hierarchy for the charges, meet with our housing contracts, and just discuss bed space would be the other.
And I think you and I talked about this, that we need to have those, identified as potential
Yep.
plans
Mhm.
if we need to pull the trigger
Yeah.
on, per se,
Yeah.
on those things, if we need to, do that. But I think, we've got to make sure everything's laid out well.
Correct.
And what does each of those steps really mean?
Mhm.
Because then are we saying to, DOC and to the U.S. Marshals that we can't take your people? They can't just suddenly decide what they're going to do. This has to be
Yeah.
a well thought out plan.
Yeah.
And know what all, each step along the way, if we have to execute it, what we need to do.
Yeah, you wouldn't completely walk away from the housing contracts, because some of the city officers or some of the city prisoners would have additional cases that are still going on in district court or in superior court. Same goes for the U.S. Marshals. There'd be those that are trial ready that would have to go to the federal court downtown, and what's that number? And can we make some concessions to try to move that population around to get them at the right spot? And DOC is the same thing. Can we look for an abbreviated method for taking and having our hearings to make it go more exponential? And the ones that are moving on, move them on quickly. The state shuttle system went from every week, which is taking state prisoners that have been sentenced by Superior Court, to every other week. So we're holding those prisoners for an extra week. And then I did speak to Superior Court too about some of the 1077 cases in the competency hearing, and the progress that's making, and can we kind of speed that and make it more expeditiously? So those are some of the things that we're thinking about. There's a lot to think about when we're talking about it, to your point, Commissioner, that we have to go through as far as planning, execution, having the right team in place. At this junction, where are we? At this junction, where are we? And what are we going to do? You know, those kind of plans.
So we have talked quite a bit about the functional obsolescence of this facility, and it is very manpower intensive to be able to manage the population with this design that we have for this jail. So, you know, if staffing is going to become a permanent challenge for us, then the need to go to a new jail with reduced staffing obligations might be forced upon us.
Right.
To be able to make sure we keep bad people locked up. So, you know, it's not as though we haven't waved the red flag about this. We have been for years,
Mhm.
but maybe this just presses us to go ahead and put the issue on the ballot. So,
And you're absolutely right. There's better staffing models. You know, we can gain efficiency by different designs. The current model that we have right now, the floor was designed for 46. And any time that the population goes over 46, it requires an additional officer. The only way that we get a true balance on that is to have 92 inmates up there, because both of them have the supervision capacity of 46. And generally it's in the 60s or 70s, so we're losing some of that capacity every day. So,
And Commissioner Keeney, you had asked about any legislative type agenda items. Another one that might be worth looking at in the future is the Washington paid family medical leave. By no means do I think that it should be eliminated, but it needs to be refined. There are, as from an employer perspective, there are some major complications for employers with the stacking of leaves, and I don't know if it was intended to roll out as such. The other thing that we recently noticed is that it's being administered differently than regular regular family medical leave. Whereas it appears Washington State is counting any hours paid as qualifying for eligibility, where under the federal program it's hours worked. So you're required to work an actual certain period of hours within a year to qualify for eligibility, but in Washington they're using any hours paid. So in the event that a person ever takes a vacation payout or sick leave or holidays, those hours are being counted toward eligibility. So we have employees across the Washington state who are not actually working hours that typically would have qualified for FMLA in the past, but because they were in some sort of pay status, they're still able to reapply for leave. And so we're also seeing people using leave year after year after year, almost to the day at this point, because of the way that it's being administered. And I'm not sure that they meant for that to happen.
and we did meet with HR. We developed a plan of reviewing those cases and going through them, but they just keep growing exponentially. That's the issue with it.
Well, and I think as, some of the business employers that I know, it is definitely an issue. I'd probably have you reach out to the Association of Washington Businesses, because they are probably taking a look at that, to see if it's on their radar. Because I know definitely with COVID, there was definitely a lot of that going on. And I think once people understand what the system is, they know how to engage in the system to their advantage, which legally they can do. So there's definitely, I know a lot of other businesses that have had that effect on them. So that would probably be the association I'd reach out to see what they're seeing on that, because it's definitely affecting businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. And then another side note is that the Spokane Police Department is putting on additional officers. And in speaking to our training department today, we know of 5 that are potentially going that way. So,
Yeah, so that's where it's like it's a culture thing within the jail, but it's also, I mean, we have to, I mean, they're not going to feel any relief unless they know someone's in the pipeline coming forward.
Right.
So how many do you have kind of in the pipeline?
The 5, that's that I'm aware of. Oh, you mean coming in?
Coming in.
In-
Yes.
So we have 7 potentially.
So in what stages are they at? I mean, have people?
So
been
some
through
of them
training?
are in
They just gone through the
polygraph,
background?
some of them are in the background investigation. It varies, but we have 7 that are in the hopper right now, which would be a +2.
Which have
Okay.
not actually been cleared for hire. So they're in
Right.
the
Yeah.
actual process of hopefully getting cleared for hire.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, so if I was working detention services, I mean, that would be, that feeling of almost, I don't want to say hopelessness, but it's like
Yeah.
we don't have that stream to even, come in. So that's why I think that's one of the areas we've got to really
hmm
look at how do we do that. I don't know, I'm going to be at a county association meeting, so I'm going to be asking other commissioners, and I know Commissioner French has different statewide boards he's on that is going to be meeting this week too, to ask other commissioners, because I mean, it seems like it is an issue across the state, and so the more that we can get, the association and different groups together to kind of sound the alarm.
Yeah.
Because I don't think it's just us. I think it's other counties, and I think, as Commissioner French said, the jail is definitely obsolete as well.
hmm
So that's not helping the
Not
situation
helping.
either. So,
Yeah, and then only a certain segment of our population could go out to Geiger anyway. So that doesn't help us. That kind of ties our hands too. The American Jail Association had their conference this year in California, and the majority of the workshops were on recruiting, retention, and what are we going to do to get ourselves out of this. So, yeah.
thank you.
Anything else?
Thank you for the awesome news.
Well, nothing's nothing's decided. I just letting you know exactly. That's what you pay me for, is to tell you these things.
Yeah.
To keep you guys posted on what's going to happen with detention. We have some strategies. We're hoping that some or part all come to fruition. But we're working at it. So
But that's where, I mean, if we need to do more of an incentive to even get people to apply, think of what that is. I mean, I can tell you, I just heard recently down in Colorado that for linemen, I mean, literally companies are giving a, $150 just show up to work bonus a day.
yeah,
I mean, so then another company started a $300 one. A friend of ours has a son down there. I mean, those are the things that aren't sustainable for the long term. But, is there, things that we need to think about and do differently just to get people to then help with the culture of the people that are already there.
and I did hear there's this one agency in our state. I'll have to look at it, but is doing a pay to stay for incentive to keep to retain the employees they have. So I don't know what it looks like or anything. I just heard wind of it. So
Yeah, and I know, that was part of it with this, trying to get the salaries where they needed to be instead of doing a retention bonus, trying to get salaries where they're at. But at some point, we got to put all options on the table
absolutely,
to keep our community safe.
yeah, and our staff safe in our
Um,
environment.
Scott?
Thanks, Mike. Of course, wanted to make sure that commissioners were aware of the situation that we're dealing with the jail, and it's a complex situation informed by not only our attrition levels and our challenges with recruiting new individuals, but also the length of stays, as Mike highlighted, and those are some of the pieces that we don't control. We don't control the arrests, the prosecution, and the adjudication through the courts. We are the catcher's mitt, and we have a place for individuals to stay who are pre-adjudicated and post-adjudicated under a year. The one thing that we do want to begin having the conversations with is our contracting agencies. By statute, the county is required to house felons in the county, and as space is available, we of course have misdemeanor populations in there on behalf of the cities and U.S. Marshals and DOC. So first, we wanted to make sure you had awareness, and then I think it's our obligation and important for us to do some reach outs and make the other contracting agencies aware of our situation, what we're dealing with. And I don't think many of them will be surprised because they're all experiencing similar staffing challenges in their entities, whether it's government or whether it's private sector business as well. But we'll begin to have those conversations as well. So there's awareness of our situation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that will lead us to our executive session. So Mark, I will let you speak to that.
Thank you. Yes, this will be under pending and potential litigation under 4230-110-1I. It'll be 10 minutes, be the board and executive management team. No actions anticipated.
Okay, it is 2:48, so I'm going to say that we're going to start at 2:50 by the time we clear the room and get everything, get the executive session started. So we anticipate being done at 3 o'clock, and then we will be adjourning for the day at 3 o'clock, correct? And we will reconvene then we will see each other next Monday, will be the next time. Oh, okay. Thank you. We will now, and it's the three commissioners, yourself, did you state that?
No, but that's me too.
And then do you want the executive management team or just, okay, thank you. Okay, very good. I was gonna say, he was kind of being that little downer there. Okay, so we will be in executive session until 3 o'clock, and we do not anticipate any decision. No action to be taken, and so we will conclude at that, and then reconvene, see each other next Monday. Thank you all.